Hello and welcome to another episode in the Clinical Innovation Award Support Series. Today's episode is with a number of clinical innovators who are working on bringing a product to market as a solution for a serious unmet clinical need. I am very excited to speak to Emily Naylor and Beatriz Tejada. They're two clinical nurse facilitators working in the ICU in St. James's Hospital, and they're with me today. They're going to speak about their journey, how it started, and how it's going, and where they hope to go in the future. There's a third member of their team, Professor Ignacio Martin-Loeches, who is a consultant in the ICU in St. James's. Unfortunately, Professor Ignacio is unable to join us today, but I'm again delighted to have yourself, Emily, and Beatrice here to speak about your project.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Guys, I'd ask you to introduce yourselves first, please.
So as Steve said, my name's Emily Naylor. I'm one of the clinical facilitators in St. James's in the ICU. I've been nursing about 15, 16 years, and in that period of time, took some time out from ICU and worked in research, some clinical audit and innovation as well, and then kind of gone full circle back to ICU, and that's pretty much my journey in nursing.
My name is Beatriz, as Steve said, and I've been working in ICU for the last 7-8 years, and I joined the education team last year. So I'm a clinical facilitator as well, and yeah, I specialized in intensive care, and I did a master's in dialysis as well. And that's about it.
Yeah, yeah, super guys. Yeah, there is a lot there. So I suppose in terms of innovation, you guys, you're on a journey now. At the moment, you're developing a solution in the space of ventilator-associated pneumonia. But I'd like to ask how you got involved in the whole process and looking for solutions to problems in healthcare.
Okay, I suppose about 18 months ago, the two of us entered a competition, an innovation competition in St. James's called Design Week. And that came out of COVID, and we'd identified this clinical need around patients who were ventilated and they developed mucosal lesions. And so we were looking at a device that could potentially prevent this with patients who are ventilated. But I guess we got down to the final 6 of that, and then we reached out to the Health Innovation Hub to see if we could progress that. We did quite a lot of research into it, looking through the literature, and we then actually pivoted our idea towards probably a more significant clinical need in ICU, which is ventilator-associated pneumonia. There's a lot of research being done in this particular area, and I guess anecdotally, we see a lot of our patients, when they're put on a ventilator, developing this particular type of pneumonia. It can be up to 40% of patients. It's not a case of if they develop it, it's a case of when they develop it. And the mortality rates for it can be as high as 75% with patients who have multi-drug resistant organisms. And I guess like we do implement specific strategies to try and prevent this, but there are definitely limitations to what is out there already, whether that's ventilator care bundles or specific devices that are used to try and prevent VAP. So that became our focus. So it's been a bit of a journey to get to where we are now, but that's how we started.
And I mean, you mentioned pivot there, and that's not uncommon, where a lot of people, they start working on a problem, they do some more research on it, talking to colleagues and doing, internet searches, etc. And they start to see that maybe this problem isn't as big or as major a challenge as something else that's quite, in the same area, in the same space. And you guys probably would have been very familiar with ventilator-associated pneumonia, considering where you worked as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we deal with on a daily basis. And I think from when we pivoted, I suppose that clinical need around mucosal lesions is still there, but we always had sort of our clinical hat on, I suppose, when we were looking at what these problems were, and maybe not thinking like commercially, you know, is the potential for, if we were to develop something, for that actually to develop into, to be able to scale up into a company or what have you, and to compete with what's already on the market. So I guess that's how we kind of turned towards the VAP route, and have learnt a lot more since over the last 18 months.
Yeah, and I suppose it is, you know, sometimes when people say a commercial route, it is important to understand that commercialization of something is what will ultimately get it back into healthcare. That healthcare doesn't have the structures or systems in place to develop something of this nature, because this is quite a big problem that you're trying to solve. So it will require a very involved solution. No, that's super. I suppose, you know, you pivoted early on in terms of the need. Can you talk about the process then of developing a solution? And I will say that, you know, same with a lot of these, that what you're developing, it is confidential, so we won't talk directly about the solution, but we'll talk about the process, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, sure. You want to?
So I suppose at the beginning, it was Emily and myself, and we did a lot of research, and we got in contact with the Health Innovation Hub. And then after a few months, when we decided that we were going to go down the route of VAP, we started talking with different specialists in this area. And that's how Professor Ignacio Martin-Loeches came to the team. So we got this idea, and then we realized that we needed more support and more help from different specialists, such as engineers, designers, people who were like able to look at the market and see if there was a gap for us to develop our idea. So it has been quite a journey. There were so many steps that we didn't think that they were going to be involved in the beginning, no? So it has been great to get all these supports, because we couldn't have done it on our own at all.
And I think there are things that we probably didn't consider in the beginning, which obviously help you to refine what you're actually looking at, and being able to be linked in with the tech transfer office in Trinity, to look at the kind of the landscape around patency. I suppose that's not something that either of us or any of us would be familiar with. And then I guess we had this idea of potentially how this device might work, but then there are all of these other factors to consider around the materials that you might use, like the manufacturing process, the cost, and, you know, like what you're actually competing against if you actually get into that market. So the Health Innovation Hub was fantastic in terms of networking us with these people and kind of guiding us and supporting us. And they were able to then bring it back to us for us to be able to answer specific questions around our product. And we would go away and we would, you know, really dig a lot deeper into and come at it from different angles. Yeah, and then I guess obviously not forgetting an enterprise island as well. I suppose with regards to going down this, like looking at the feasibility of this product and whether there's space for it in the market, and absolutely, you know, what we thought when we thought we had an application form that was good to submit, you give it to one of these specialists who, you know, this is what they do day in, day out, and then a whole rake of questions come back and very constructive feedback. But then it's been a huge learning curve, because it really gets you thinking about your product or your idea in a completely different light.
Yeah, and it is, as you said, it's a steep learning curve, because, you know, they do it day in and day out, and they know what they're looking for. And I suppose as part of your journey, and the supports that you linked in with, like linking in with the TTO office in Trinity, we have another one of these webinars on the tech transfer office here in Galway and the supports that they provide. very similar, same office structure, etc., where they link you in with people who know how to do things from a technical perspective, but also around that kind of patent and landscape, as in you yourself don't have to be the expert in understanding patents or freedom to operate and that sort of stuff, but have some idea that the space isn't too competitive, or you're not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I suppose from you guys had a concept of what you wanted to do in your heads and on paper, and I suppose to linked in with Gerald here in the Health Innovation Hub to kind of move the design along a bit as well. And there's those kind of supports out there. And
exactly. Like I can't imagine where you would start if you didn't have those connections through the hub. Like we had this idea of oh well, we could just do this, and if we could just do that, well then that'll work and that will. But actually, when you actually look at the technology behind it, and like working with Gerald, and he would come up with these designs, and you'd be like, oh, actually we didn't really consider that because we didn't know anything about that material, and that you can't do that, and how would you then do that? He was able to pose a lot of questions to us as well that we obviously hadn't considered. But then you're working together, and then eventually you have this, what was initially in your head from the beginning is down on paper, and you're looking at it going, actually, yeah, that's exactly, you kind of get excited then, because you're like, that's exactly what we want, that's what could work. But obviously it's just the beginning, so don't get too carried away.
And I think that's a really good point. It is the beginning. I mean, there's a lot of work to get you here, but now you're at the start line pretty much. And some, often people think, oh, how much work do I have to have done before do I need a prototype or etc.? But I think it's a good example here. It's, where you have a design concept, you work with the different groups, you grow it into something. It's a CAD version now, or it's a computerized 3D model or whatever, but it isn't, there's nothing there yet to hold in your hand, but the plan is there to move it forward. So it's not for people to put too much thought into those sorts of technical things, because like as you said, you guys are experts in your area, you're learning about a whole load of different things as you're going down this path, but you don't have to be an expert in material science or whatever. There's people there who can do that. Yeah.
And I think that's it, like you're working, like it obviously started as just myself, Beatriz and Ignacio, but then you're part of this team that you actually then really complement each other, because you're coming together with all these different skills and expertise, and that's the uniqueness of being part of something like this, because it's like the experts in lots of different areas. When you bring them together, hopefully something really good will come out of this.
Yeah, and then that's I suppose the importance of having those different expertise coming together. It's great. Yeah. So I suppose what's next for you guys on your journey?
So I suppose we are progressing to the commercial feasibility award, and that's where we're working at the moment, which will help us to validate the idea with the key stakeholders, especially around the landscape, around ventilation associated pneumonia.
It'll help us, I suppose, the idea of being able to have this feasibility report, we'll look at the competitive landscape. It will really drill down on like the regulatory pathway, looking at the key stakeholders. Just because we're saying we're experts in our clinical area, we want to get the opinions of other people to see, are they concurring with, like our thought processes. Looking at the regulatory IP pathway as well. That's a whole different ballgame. So just essentially, the feasibility grant, and hopefully that's favourable for us to be able to then progress to the next stage, which would be the actual commercialisation fund. So that's what we're hoping for long term, but I suppose it's small steps, and this is where we're at now.
And again, yes, like I said, this is to get you to the starting line, and you get a positive report back. Touch wood, fingers crossed. Then it's an invitation to move to a COM fund, which is a significant tranche of money. from Enterprise Ireland to develop your solution and ultimately set up a business or spin out a company. And yeah, it's a very exciting space. And even listening to you now, and I hope the people that watch this understand that you guys are speaking about regulatory pathways, IP, commercialization, pivoting, all of this language, which was, which would be new to a lot of people, but it was new to you guys too not so long ago. And now you're speaking like you've been in it all your life.
I'm not sure about that. But with the help of you guys, we're getting to grips with it.
But I think that's important because it's something people can get to grips with. It's language, I suppose, and the work is the same. You need to find out if this is good. You need to talk to people and push it forward. Okay, guys, I think we're near the end. I really appreciate your time. I'd like to ask you, what advice would you give to anyone who's thinking of applying for this award?
Embrace all the feedback that they give you, because there is a lot of research to be done even when you have a good idea. Like, you need to see what is out there and if there is an actual need. And there is so many parts of the process that you kind of like take for granted at the beginning, but with the help of like you guys, and they kind of like help you to narrow down like what actually you need to
they really get you focused. So I suppose it's all that constructive feedback. Like, it's I guess give yourself plenty of time. It's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a very steep learning curve. But and there are challenges along the way. It's never, I don't think anything is ever straightforward, but we're kind of used to that working in the areas that we're working. So just embrace all the support that you can get, and hopefully with the determination you'll get to the finish line.
And hopefully we'll see you at the finish line in due course. Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.